What if I told you that some of the most legendary names in the music industry had secrets that would blow your mind? You might know their hits, but do you know their hidden stories? Today, we're diving into the top 10 closeted stars in music whose truth will leave you shocked. Let's get into it. 10. David Bowie.
A man waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us.
Let's kick off with an icon whose bold style and daring music changed rock history. David Bowie was more than just Ziggy Stardust, his legendary alter ego. But beneath the glam and glitter, Bowie's statements about his sexuality kept fans questioning what was real and what was part of the act. You won't believe the truth behind his story. Although Boy George helped pioneer the glam rock movement, David Bowie will be forever the face of it. One of the most revered singers of the 70s and early 80s, Bowie created a dreamy, larger-than-life discography that has inspired countless rock musicians who have come after him. Following his death in 2016, Rolling Stone named him the greatest rock star ever. And it was discovered this year, 2022, that Bowie is the best-selling vinyl artist of the 21st century. Bowie first declared himself gay in an interview with Michael Watts for a 1972 issue of Melody Maker, coinciding with his campaign for stardom as the alter ego Ziggy Stardust. "I'm gay and always have been," he said, "even when I was David Jones." His proclamation didn't exactly hurt sales for the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars that year, and Bowie went on to become one of the decade's most successful artists. But he went on to voice regret over his famous statement in a 1983 interview with Rolling Stone. "The biggest mistake I ever made was telling that Melody Maker writer that I was bisexual," he said. "Christ, I was so young then. I was experimenting." Known for his far-out and funk-infused pop music, it wasn't necessarily a surprise when David Bowie developed the bisexual alien stage persona of Ziggy Stardust in the early 1970s. While the question of Bowie's own sexuality was the topic of conversations for decades, with the singer himself going back and forth on what his labels were, he finally set the record straight in 2002. "I had no problem with people knowing I was bisexual," he told the now-defunct Blender magazine, "but I had no inclination to hold any banners or be a representative of any group of people." Although he was open about his sexuality, perhaps Bowie's greatest contribution to the LGBTQ+ community was his androgynous stage presentation and epic makeup looks. At the end of the day, he was just being his authentic, artistic self, and we will always respect him for that. 9. Cole Porter. Our next legend is a classic, yet his story is anything but old-fashioned. Behind the glamorous tunes and sophisticated lyrics of Cole Porter lies a secret that would have shocked the audiences of his time. This iconic composer hid more than just clever melodies in his songs. He also coded his true feelings in plain sight. While Cole Porter was married to a woman for 34 years, most biographers believe he was gay. This composer and songwriter was known widely for his scores, many of which appeared on Broadway. Porter's song, "I've Got You Under My Skin," made famous by Frank Sinatra, hints at his sexuality, with lyrics like, "I'd sacrifice anything come what might, for the sake of having you near, in spite of a warning voice that comes in the night." The Cole Porter song, "I Loved Him But He Didn't Love Me," is usually sung by a woman. But in Confidentially Cole, the one-person show opening Saturday at the Tiffany Theater, the 1929 tune will be sung by a young man, Sean Hayden. And that's where Confidentially comes in. For the inspiration of the show is not the Porter who is the darling of Cafe Society, the soigné composer of Anything Goes and Kiss Me Kate, who held court with his socialite wife Linda in his suite at the Waldorf Astoria and his palazzo in Venice. It's also far from the Porter whom Cary Grant played in the 1946 movie Night and Day as a devoted lover and husband whose songs were more witty than passionate. The ghost that hovers over Confidentially Cole is the Porter who picked up sailors on the docks, who dressed up his tricks as delivery men, and who wrote desperate and passionate love letters like this one to Russian poet Boris Kochno. I miss you so much that I am falling apart, and if this continues, this utter silence, I don't dare think what I could do. This was a man who was pouring his heart out in these songs, and I wondered how many people really knew about that side of him, says Hayden. William McBrien, author of Cole Porter, a biography, Knopf, 1998, and to be released in paperback by Vintage next month, makes a compelling argument that the composer's homosexual love affairs inspired his most personal and passionate work. Easy to Love, for example, was written for Ed Talk, an architect whom Porter fancied. Night and Day was inspired by Nelson Barclift, a choreographer who, like Kochno, was one of the composer's great loves. The love songs were very coded. They make sly references, McBrien says, and there is a wonderful ambiguity to most of them. That's why they could get so much heterosexual mileage. Cole was aware that if you disclosed too much in Hollywood, you were likely to lose your job and your audience. 8. Lance Bass.
I mean, it was the most incredible experience ever and some of the happiest times of my life.
You probably remember the boy band craze of the late 90s, and who could forget the charm of NSYNC's Lance Bass? But what the fans didn't know at the time was that Lance was hiding a secret that would take years to come out. What finally pushed him to reveal the truth? Let's find out. American music artist Lance Bass is most widely known for being the bass singer of the boy band sensation NSYNC. They're the group who gave us the #1 single, It's Gonna Be Me, in 2000. When NSYNC disbanded in 2002, Bass formed Freelance Entertainment, a music management company. This venture did not fare well though, and the company soon closed. Lance Bass was just 16 years old when he was catapulted to fame in the boy band NSYNC in 1995. Landing his spot in pop history after Justin Timberlake asked his vocal coach if he knew anybody who would be suitable for the group. 4 years later, at the peak of both of their fame, Lance publicly dated Boy Meets World actor Danielle Fishel, who was 18 years old at the time. The two stars enjoyed a year-long relationship, and Lance was even Danielle's prom date at her Calabasas high school. But just 2 weeks after the dance, he abruptly broke up with her. Lance continued to exclusively date women until he was 22 years old, but in 2006, 4 years after NSYNC went on a hiatus, Lance came out as gay in a cover story for People magazine. Following several gossip articles and snapshots of the singer in gay bars, Bass's sexual orientation was announced in an exclusive story in People magazine in 2006. Soon after, the Human Rights Campaign awarded Bass the Human Rights Campaign Visibility Award. The former NSYNC member kept his sexuality hidden for years. When he finally told his parents, acceptance was a process. Lance Bass remembers trying to pray the gay away as a 5-year-old boy growing up in a small Mississippi town. I was taught that homosexuality is a sin and you have to fix it. You can't act on it, Bass, now 43, told Today parents. So every night I'd get into bed and ask God to please fix me. With each year, Bass, who is naturally outgoing, became more and more withdrawn. He was afraid that if he spoke too much, his classmates would discover his secret. Or even worse, his conservative Southern Baptist parents, Jim and Diane Bass, would find out. The last thing I'd ever want to do is hurt my family, Bass said. I was terrified of losing them. You hear so many horror stories, especially in the South, of families rejecting their gay kids. When Bass joined the pop group NSYNC in 1995, he was a 16-year-old high school junior and deeply closeted. He never feared the judgment of his former bandmates, J.C. Chazet, Joey Fatone, Chris Kirkpatrick, and Justin Timberlake, but there was always the worry of his mom and dad. And how would fans take it? Bass wasn't ready to find out. 7. Pete Townsen.
The fire still
Rock legend Pete Townsen of The Who has always been known for pushing boundaries, both musically and personally. But in 1990, he made a statement that left fans scratching their heads. Was he really coming out? Or was there more to the story than meets the eye? Townsen's case is different from the others on this list. In a 1990 interview with Timothy White, The Who guitarist appeared to come out of the closet. "I know how it feels like to be a woman because I am a woman," he said. Rough Boys was a coming out, an acknowledgement of the fact that I'd had a gay life. But Townsen, who was married to a woman at the time, clarified his remarks in a 1994 interview with Playboy, saying, "I talked about my gay life, which I meant was actually about the friends that I've had who are gay." The interviewer kind of dotted the T's and crossed the I's and assumed that I was coming out, which I wasn't at all. Townsen's initial statement caused much confusion among fans, and it continues to be quoted, often out of context, to this day. The Who's Pete Townsen is one of the most creative forces rock has ever known, with the singer-guitarist writing some of rock's most iconic songs. The band's list of hits is like a blitzkrieg of classic rock milestones. I Can't Explain, Substitute, My Generation, and many more. Not to mention a concept album in the rock opera Tommy. Townsen also put a stamp on rock with his signature windmill move, often copied by younger players. The Rock and Roll Hall of Famer gets big props for being open about his fluid sexuality. Townsen first told the world he was not straight in Timothy White's 1990 book of interviews, Rock Lives, Profiles and Interviews, affirming it again in his own 2012 memoir, Who I Am, in which he described himself as probably bisexual, acknowledging both an affair with British journalist Danny Fields and his lust for fellow rocker Mick Jagger, who he calls the only man I've ever seriously wanted to fuck. All of which should come as no surprise to fans who remember Townsen's 1980 solo hit Rough Boys, which Rolling Stone called the most overtly homoerotic song in his catalog. Yes, maybe even the most overtly homoerotic song in anyone's catalog. 6. Michael Styp. When it comes to enigmatic rock stars, few have kept people guessing like REM's Michael Styp. He's been an alternative icon for decades, but his personal life remained a bit of a mystery until he started dropping some major hints about where he stands on the spectrum. Michael Styp, frontman of the indie rock band REM, has been open about his sexuality for decades, having appeared on the cover of Out magazine back in 1995. In a 2004 interview, Styp said, "I think there's a line drawn between gay and queer, and for me, queer describes something that's more inclusive of the gray areas." He told The Observer, "On a sliding scale of sexuality, I'd place myself around 80-20, but I definitely prefer men to women. I had sex with and enjoyed sex with women until I met someone that I fell in love with, and who is now my boyfriend." Growing up as an army brat in a family full of Christian ministers, Michael Styp was certainly the black sheep, and thankfully so, as he is one of the most influential singers and songwriters of the 80s and 90s. Styp is the co-founder of the alternative rock band REM. His iconic voice and highly political, environmental, and controversial lyrics have garnered one of the largest, most diverse fan bases in history. The singer has not truly come out as gay. Despite having been in long-term relationships with men, he describes himself simply as queer. Though not much is known about his previous partners, photographer Thomas Dozal is Styp's current significant other. Michael Styp has said he's proud he was always open about his sexuality in a new interview. Speaking to Billboard, the former REM frontman, who came out as gay in 1994, said he believed the other members of the band knew about his sexuality long before he came out. "I was never closeted," Styp said. "That's the thing that's beautiful about it and I'm so proud of. You can never find a single picture of me pretending to have a girlfriend or being somebody that I'm not. I was never that guy. Any long-standing REM fan who had not figured out I was queer before that point wasn't looking very hard. In the same interview, Styp also said it was the right decision to disband REM in 2011 because it allowed fans to take a step back and reflect on the band's legacy. The frontman said, "Encapsulating the creative work of the band by disbanding allowed us, and I think the rest of the world, to take a step back and look at it for what it was. We were not the guys who were going to always be there, and I think that did us a huge favor, honestly." Speaking to NME recently, Styp also opened up about the first time he discussed his sexuality in public back in 1994. "Part of being myself was me speaking publicly about my sexuality for the first time. For me, that was just a privacy issue. As a public figure, I had exposed myself so much, and I wanted to keep something for myself. It reached a point where that was ridiculous, and I decided to speak publicly about it, which I'm happy I did, of course." Reflecting on the band's 25-year anniversary of Monster, Styp said, "A lot had happened to us and in the world since our last world tour in 1989. Culture had shifted, politics had shifted, things had changed dramatically. We were a part of that change, or perhaps inspired part of that in music and culture. Then we put out these 2 records that were multi-million selling." 5. Frank Ocean. Frank Ocean is one of those artists whose music leaves a lasting impression, but behind the soulful melodies and poetic lyrics lies a story that caught everyone off guard. When he decided to share his truth, it shook the entire music industry and paved the way for countless others to follow. As his debut, Channel Orange, was the best reviewed album of 2012, it's safe to say Frank Ocean was destined for greatness. The R&B singer is one of the most critically acclaimed artists of his time, despite only having one other studio album, Blonde, to his name. In the same year Channel Orange was released, Ocean took to his Tumblr blog to release a statement thanking the man he had unrequited feelings for when he was 19. The man is said to have inspired many songs on Ocean's first album. The second member of Odd Future to come out as bisexual, Frank Ocean is the kind of artist whose avant-garde music resonates with intelligent types. Infamously private, he won't release any new music for several years. When he finally does, it never fails to cause an uproar in pop culture. We remember when Ocean's coming out was a huge deal. It all happened when Ocean wrote an open letter, initially intended for the liner notes on Channel Orange, that preemptively addressed speculation about his attraction in the past to another man. Instead, on July 4th, 2012, he published the open letter on his Tumblr blog. Fans were surprised but ultimately supportive. Ever since then, Ocean's been open about his sexuality on songs like Chanel, Self-Control, Siegfried, and Forrest Gump. 4. Clay Aiken. Remember the early days of American Idol? Clay Aiken was the underdog who won America's heart. But behind his sweet southern charm, he was hiding a truth that the world only found out years later. His journey from secrecy to living openly is both inspiring and heart-wrenching. Born in North Carolina, Clay Aiken got his break as a beloved soft rock and pop vocalist and contestant on the second season of American Idol. While he came in second place, he received the exposure and fanfare necessary to launch a successful career, both as a musician and a politician. Following Idol, Aiken's debut album achieved multi-platinum status, and he then went on to release 6 more albums, collectively selling 5 million copies. Afterward, he changed course from music to politics, first as a UNICEF ambassador and currently as a Democratic Congress candidate for his home state. In an interview with People magazine in 2008, soon after the birth of his son, Aiken told the American public he was gay, though many already had their suspicions. "One thing I've found of people in the public eye, either you're a womanizer or you've got to be gay," Aiken told Rolling Stone in 2003. "Since I'm neither one of those, people are completely concerned about me." 5 years later, the season 2 American Idol runner-up posed with his newborn son Parker on the cover of People and revealed he was, in fact, gay. The 29-year-old former American Idol runner-up, multi-platinum recording artist, and Broadway star credits his son, conceived by in vitro fertilization with friend and producer James Foster, with making him realize that he could no longer hide his homosexuality from the world. "It was the first decision I made as a father," Aiken told the magazine, which arrives on newsstands Friday. "I cannot raise a child to lie or to hide things. I wasn't raised that way, and I'm not going to raise a child to do that." Aiken said he only told his family that he was gay in 2004. He recalled a tearful discussion with his mother in a car after dropping off his brother, who was being sent to Iraq at a military base. "It was dark. I was sitting there thinking to myself, I don't know why I started thinking about it. I just started bawling. She made me pull over the car and it just came out," he said. "She started crying. She was obviously somewhat stunned, but she was very supportive and very comforting." Aiken said his mother still struggles with things quite a bit, but she's come a long way. The magazine cover features Aiken holding his son born in August. Aiken, who considers himself a born-again Christian, said he knows he may turn off some fans, known as claymates, with his admission and his decision to have a child outside traditional marriage. "I never intended to lie to anybody at all," he said, "but if they leave, I don't want them to leave hating me." Gay groups applauded Aiken's public admission. The Claymates, Aiken's mostly female fans, have remained devoted through 5 full-length records and 9 tours. He came in second place on The Celebrity Apprentice earlier this year. 3. Lou Reed. Few rock stars have ever been as boundary-pushing and enigmatic as Lou Reed. From fronting the Velvet Underground to a decades-long solo career, Reed always flirted with controversy, both musically and personally. But behind his rebellious image and glam rock persona, there's a deeper story about his sexuality that's still talked about today. From his work with the alternative rock group Velvet Underground to his decades-long solo career, Lou Reed remains one of the most infamous rock stars. During the years of glam rock, Reed's onstage persona embraced androgyny, like his friend David Bowie, with whom he was rumored to have had a close yet tumultuous friendship. Though Reed never fully confirmed his sexuality, despite widespread whispers in the music scene that he was queer, 2 years before his death he remarked, "Guys walking around in makeup is just fun. Why shouldn't men be able to put on makeup and have fun like women have?" Lou Reed openly discussed his bisexuality earlier in his career, and he was the first rock star to write songs about transgender women. In the 1960s, Reed fronted one of rock's most important bands, the Velvet Underground. The Underground's music was a dark antidote to the feel-good hippie tunes of the era, with Reed penning songs about heroin, S&M, and even an achingly sad tribute to transgender cult film actress Candy Darling. Candy says, a key figure in Andy Warhol's famed Factory. Reed would write about Candy again on the 1972 solo hit Walk on the Wild Side, throwing in verses about Holly Woodlawn and Jackie Curtis, 2 more transgender superstars from Warhol's camp. Later in life, Reed found love with avant-garde musician Laurie Anderson. The two had been together for 21 years when Reed died of liver disease in 2013. He was 71. Soon after Lou Reed's death at age 71, on Sunday, Rostam Batmanglij of Vampire Weekend tweeted that the legendary rock star was maybe the first out songwriter, an allusion to his purported bisexuality. During his lifetime, Reed was famous for sybaritic pursuits and unorthodox lifestyle. But was he bisexual? He certainly wasn't heterosexual. As a teenager, Reed displayed homosexual feelings that alarmed his parents, who forced him to undergo electroconvulsive therapy. He vividly described the treatment in the song Kill Your Sons. During his glam rock years, Reed's onstage persona frequently bordered on androgyny, which, combined with his well-known and tumultuous friendship with the openly bisexual David Bowie, created an impression of epicene pansexuality. Throughout the 60s and 70s, Reed was also rumored to have pursued a number of same-sex lovers, though most of these stories remain pure scuttlebutt. Billy Name, a photographer and factory regular, has claimed that he and Reed had had sex in 1968, though their encounter sounds less than passionate. Better documented is Reed's relationship with Rachel, a trans woman about whom little is known. Rachel toured with Reed in the mid-1970s, and the two were known to be lovers. Although Rachel seems to have identified as a woman, Reed referred to her as both genders, sometimes in the same breath. Nothing could impress her. He'd hardly heard my music and didn't like it all that much when he did. After they broke up, Reed married and later divorced Sylvia Morales, a straight woman who was alleged to have a part-time job as a dominatrix. 2. Lil Nas X. From a small-town kid running a fan account to becoming one of the most daring artists of our time, Lil Nas X's journey is nothing short of legendary. But what makes his story even more groundbreaking is how he boldly claimed his identity in the public eye, making waves with every step. Equal parts talented, humorous, and trailblazing, Lil Nas X went from a shy, closeted kid running a Nicki Minaj fan account on Twitter to Gen Z's most influential gay icon. He's been unafraid to talk about his sexuality in his music. From the steamy confidence of Montero, Call Me By Your Name, to the vulnerability of Sun Goes Down, Lil Nas X has done so much for LGBTQ plus representation, one song at a time. At the peak of his fame after the viral release of his 2018 country rap hit Old Town Road, Lil Nas X publicly came out via Twitter in 2019 but didn't specify his identity. He then came out as bisexual in 2023. Lil Nas X has since released multiple unabashedly queer songs and music videos that have gained him genre-spanning success, including Billboard chart toppers like Montero, Call Me By Your Name, and Industry Baby. The story of Lil Nas X's success is just as unique as he is. He had lightning in a bottle with his breakout hip-hop country song Old Town Road, which eventually got a remix with Billy Ray Cyrus and won 2 Grammys. The young artist had the whole world's attention in his hands and decided to go deeper into his craft with music that reflects his authentic identity and personality. The moment was awe-inspiring to generations of LGBTQ+ listeners who have never seen such a brazen representation of queer lust in mainstream music. But his pole dancing descent to hell didn't sit well with all audiences, and the biblical references strewn throughout the video as a call out of the religious suppression of LGBTQ identities drew heavy backlash from Christian communities. 1. Leonard Bernstein.
Take my word for it, that outburst of chromatic rage is classically contained.
Leonard Bernstein is a name synonymous with American music and cultural legacy. The genius behind West Side Story, On the Waterfront, and Peter Pan, Bernstein's influence spans decades. But behind his celebrated compositions and public image as a devoted husband and father, there was a hidden truth about his sexuality that remained largely concealed during his lifetime. Did you know that the famous composer of West Side Story, Peter Pan, and On the Waterfront was gay? After years of concealing his homosexuality by having relationships with women, including marrying actress Felicia Cohn Montea Legray, Bernstein finally came out in 1976 and pursued relationships with men. Bernstein is considered to be one of the most important conductors of his time and was the first American conductor to receive international acclaim. He was the first American-born conductor to lead a major American symphony orchestra and became a music director of the New York Philharmonic. Bernstein also produced a great deal of his own art, including operas like Candide and A Quiet Place, the musical West Side Story, and music for films like On the Waterfront. He's considered one of the most pivotal figures in the history of American classical music, winning 23 Grammys, 10 Emmys, 2 Tonys, and an Oscar nomination, among myriad other achievements. Proudly Jewish, he was also, in the words of his West Side Story playwright Arthur Lawrence, a gay man who got married to a woman. He wasn't conflicted about his sexual orientation at all, he was just gay. Leonard Bernstein, Jerome Robbins, Arthur Lawrence, and Stephen Sondheim were the 4 gay Jewish men, all working at the very top of their craft, who created West Side Story, one of the most enduring musicals of the 20th century. Like many gay men of his generation, Bernstein appeared to be a devoted husband and father in public, while carrying on a promiscuous homosexual life behind the scenes. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into music industry secrets, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Check out these other videos for more shocking stories and untold truths. See you next time.